Welcome to the Jboy Show, hosted by Jake Crain, the fastest growing sports show in the nation.
I'm Coach Hugh Freeze.
This is Super Bowl champion Brandon Graham.
Hey, this is DJ Shockley, and you're watching.
And thanks for watching the Jboy Show.
What's up, everybody? As usual, appreciate you hopping in. Hope your morning, afternoon, evening, nightcap, whatever is going well, and always appreciate you joining us. Got a great interview today with Hunter Johnson. That's right, of the Tuscaloosa News. It's great stuff. We talk football, we talk basketball, get down into it. We talk about the elevation of the SEC in college basketball, something I'm going to hit in my monologue as well, and that there may not be a team that typically has been dominating the SEC in the far past and up until really, last year or the last couple years. I think you'll find that interesting. But first, as usual, got to give a shout out to betonline.ag. Head over there today. The online casino is always open. They've got props, game props, team props, player props, teasers, pleasers, parlays, however you get down, they've got it. And if you go there now and sign up, you get a 50% sign-up bonus. They already got great sign-up bonuses. They do a great job. They're going to play the sharps. They're going to get out in front of you. They're going to gamble against you. You're going to get your spreads. And they've got their week one spreads out of college football. I know everybody's waiting on that. And there's a few that you really need to hammer home. And again, if you've heard our Jake's take on that, you know what I mean. But head over to betonline.ag and sign up today. My monologue today, and we haven't hit college basketball in a while. And there's something that, I was saying last season that the SEC, when they make their mind up that they want to dominate something, it's not a matter of when, it's a matter of if. And in my opinion, about 4 or 5 years ago, the SEC decided they wanted to be a premier player in college basketball. And if you look at the coaches that are in the league now, from the top to the bottom, it's as good as it's ever been. If you look at the draft picks recently, it's as good as it's ever been, which means what? The talent is as good as it's ever been. And they're not just coming from one school. And that brings me to my monologue today, and the main point, I guess, or the entree of this monologue. I think Kentucky's reign dominating the SEC in college basketball is over. I think it's over. Not that they won't be good or they're not going to recruit well. Kentucky will always recruit well. They'll always be a huge staple in college basketball. But I think the days of them just running away with it and being the guiding light or the shining light on the hill for the SEC is coming to a close. I don't know how much longer Cal's going to be there. You've heard rumblings. Last year, they had an off year, and now everybody is recruiting at a high level. Everybody is. It's not just Kentucky and Florida and everybody else. Bruce Pearl's recruiting. Nate Oates is recruiting. Rick Barnes is recruiting. Eric Musselman's recruiting. Quanzo Martin's recruiting. I mean, they're getting guys left and right from all over the country. And these arenas and the passion, it's tough to be equal to anywhere. We know, you look at college basketball in the SEC, and when a team is good in college basketball, they fill that arena up. It is deafening. The student sections are great. And now you look around the league, there are no off nights. There, especially in road games. You're not going to the Tad Pad and just walking in with an easy dub. You're not going to the Hump and walking in with an easy dub. You're not going out to Mizzou. You're not going to Vandy. You're not going to Auburn. You're not going to Bama. You have different teams, and a lot of them, most of them, 90% of them have unbelievable atmospheres. Unbelievable. And it's a fever, and I feel like SEC fans have caught it. And it's good to have parity in the SEC. It's good to not have one team just dominate for a huge period of time. That's good. That's healthy. And I think we are entering the golden era of SEC basketball. It's not there's 2, maybe 3 teams that can compete this year. I think going forward into this coming up season, the SEC is about to go on a historic run. And the great thing is, you don't know who it's going to be. We got kind of an idea, and I know the transfer portal is like a sliding door, but there are a lot of programs that are on the up and up. Even I know A&M fans want results, and I think they're going to get them, but you got Buzz Williams at A&M. You got Jerry Stackhouse at Vandy. And those are teams that have finished in the bottom. And when you have those coaches at those programs with those resources, I don't think they're going to be in the bottom long. And you're going to start seeing more SEC teams in the NCAA tournament, but you're going to see more SEC teams win in the NCAA tournament. Look at recruiting. Look at the draft. It's starting to become more even. The Adolph Rupp days and it's Kentucky and everybody else day, And that, again, not saying they won't win the conference, but I don't think you're going to have anybody just running through it anymore like it's nothing, or just an easy assumption at the beginning. Well, these guys are on a totally different level than anybody else. And that is great for the Southeastern Conference. It's great for college basketball, unless, you're the ACC or the Big Ten or the Big 12. And obviously we know what they've done. But watching the SEC, because look, I remember, just like a lot of you guys, I know our audience is a lot, ton of SEC fans from different places. We remember. You remember turning on the basketball game and saying, all right, well, Kentucky's going to destroy us. Florida's going to destroy us. But maybe we'll get in the NCAA tournament. And man, if we can make it to the second round, if we could make it to the Sweet 16. Now, at a lot of places, that's the expectation. That's the standard. And it's happening at a very fast rate. And it's only going to continue. And that's my monologue for today. Let's get Hunter Johnson in here. Let's win the water cooler. Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Excited to get to the interview portion of today's show. And our guest is a guy that whether you love him or hate him, his content's always really interesting. He always has very interesting and insightful stuff to say, and he's very funny, and I enjoy following him on Twitter. Me and him go back and forth sometimes in fun ways, and that's Alabama sports personality. He's got some big things on the horizon. I'm not going to throw that out there yet. I know a lot of exciting things happening in his life. He's already a digital marketing executive as well, doing a lot of things, and that is Mr. Hunter Johnson. Hunter, what's up, man?
Jake, happy to be here, man. I appreciate you having me. Seems like we've been trying to do this for a few weeks and never could happen, and I'm glad it's finally happening.
Yeah, definitely. We played a hell of a game of, I guess you could say, Twitter DM/email tag, but finally got it set up, and I'm excited to talk to you. But first, I'd be remiss if I didn't give a shout out to somebody that, and look, I wasn't close to him. I followed him on Twitter, but had a lot of respect for what he did and his true fandom and the way he went about it. And I know he was a friend of yours in Luke Ratliff, and he passed away obviously recently. And I just want to give condolences to the family and give you a second just to tell everybody kind of who he is for a second. And, the amount of people that he affected at such a young age is a ton.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. And I'm sure I would not be surprised at all if his mom, Miss Pam, ends up listening to this. So I'm sure she'll appreciate this as well. What everybody saw from Luke was the big guy sitting on the front row of basketball games, or the guy on Twitter, making jokes. But he was so much more than that. He was just such a true, genuine dude. He was such an enthusiast. He made those around him better. He enjoyed putting a smile on someone's face. By that same token, though, that came with a lot of responsibility, and it gave him a lot of anxiety. He did not relish that role. It was not something that he was used to. He was not used to going into those types of situations and being the center of attention. But he was so good at it. And I'm so glad that what began as kind of like, he knew that I'd run the student section when I was in school at Alabama. So it began as kind of a mentor type thing. And it really became more of a friendship where, I guess it's kind of weird for a 35-year-old dude to have a 23-year-old friend, but, he'd come over to my house and I'd cook a steak. So we would just, watch ball or shoot shit or whatever.
A true friend.
Yeah, it just became like a very, very true friend. Got to know his family. I've gotten really close with them since everything's happened. I think I might even be going to the beach with him for a few days the next month. So, miss him every single day. I hate what I was so excited about was that he had decided he wanted to stay in Tuscaloosa, which is where I live, my hometown, and he wanted to be a part of the community here. And what we lost, we lost Luke, but we also lost so much of what he was going to do in this community. And I hate that this community won't get to see that, experience that. But what we did get to see was how loved he was, and how many people cared about him, and people who did not even know him who were so saddened by his passing. And whether it was Alabama fans or even people all across the SEC, it was just really impressive to see everybody kind of come together in his memory.
Yeah, and it's something. And again, obviously Auburn, Alabama, there's a ton of rivalries in the SEC, but we all share that fandom, that love for the team, and it's amazing. Whenever there's another conference that starts talking and all the SEC fans gang up, it's kind of together. It's like Ronald Reagan said, it's amazing how quick we come together if an alien invasion happened. And, when you see somebody like that's passionate, that we know, as fans and people that have followed it, you see someone like that pass. I mean, it hurts everybody because, again, this is it's a way of life for us down here, and it's something that we love. And I think those were very true words. And Miss Pam, if you're listening, God bless you. And, I know it's a tough time, but again, a ton accomplished in a short amount of time. And hey, you got to see Alabama basketball obviously have one of their greatest years, and I want to get to that, Hunter. But the first thing I want to talk about is, as we kind of segue, and I know it's tough to segue from that, but going into this season, and I want to ask you, as an Alabama fan, as a guy that has covered it, and I'm sure you've kind of gotten used to the dominance. When you look at this season with what Alabama has to replace, how do you feel about some of the young guys going in, Bryce Young, some new offensive linemen? We know they're talented, but when you look at this team, what's the first thing that comes to mind as we move toward fall camp here?
I'm not trying to have too many expectations for this team. Like, I say that, and I'm going to be upset if we lose a game, obviously. But it's going to be interesting to see how that young offensive line comes together, and to see how Bryce Young is going to look as a quarterback. I think the pieces are there at receiver. Now, obviously, you look at the receivers that we've had the last 2 years, you're not going to be able to recreate that. It's just impossible.
Yeah.
But going to have some really good pieces there. It's really going to, I think getting some experience early on is going to really help. But I think Bryce is really good. I think there's a reason he was the number one recruit in the country. And I guess I just have and this is kind of a symptom of the dominance. I have so much, confidence in Nick Saban and the coaching staff that, I can't, I'm not going to worry about it. Like, whoever he puts out there is probably going to be okay. It could end up being, I don't know if you remember our 2010 season. You probably do, because it was Cam back. But that team was really young at DB, which back then, when you played a style that was more in the box and taking deep ball shots, that really mattered more. You weren't scoring 40 points every game. So if a DB blows a coverage, you're screwed. It happened to us in the 2010 LSU game. Happened in the Iron Bowl that year too. I don't think that matters as much now. I think teams are going to score no matter what. It's all a matter of can you get one stop instead of can you stop them 6-7 times. So I think that while the defense is young, I know that there's talent there at linebacker. Bringing in Toa too is just going to be another great piece to have. So I feel good about the defense. But it's all about how many points you can score. Yeah.
And even, Nick Saban said it himself, at some point he came to the realization of, we're not beating anybody 9-6 anymore. You're not going to get your 17 nothings. Because you remember, Hunter, when he was starting out, it was, we are going to not give up 150 yards of total offense. We're not going to turn the ball over. We're going to protect it, and we're going to win 24-6. And nowadays you look and and I talk about this all the time, and being able to be malleable as a head coach. And even at the top of the mountain where Nick Saban is, he made the decision, I have to change the way that we go about things to evolve to the game. Because one man, as much as Nick Saban has and power and all that stuff, the game is going to continue to change, and it always will. But it takes a certain type of person or CEO to be willing to make that change. And I think that's what Kirby Smart is realizing going into this year.
He's Kirby. That's one thing we can get together on. We'll just bash Kirby. And I've made this comment on Twitter, is that Kirby Smart's running the same offense we ran from 2008 to 2013.
It's very true.
Football has changed. You can't try Stetson Bennett the fourth out there, and not. You got to at least have somebody who can do some RPOs. Yeah. And he was not able to do those.
Blake Sims isn't winning the Natty at quarterback anymore, in my opinion. Like you said, you got to have a guy, in my opinion, Hunter, and not to cut you off, because I think you're exactly right. You have to have the ability to spread the ball around in the air, or at least give the illusion that you can spread the ball in there to keep the defense honest. Because what's been the MO against Georgia? All right, safeties, everybody walk down. Here we go. They're going to get in heavier personnel. And like you said, they're going to run power. They're going to run counter. They're going to run play action and hit the tight end. But I think nowadays, outside of Nick Marshall, who you could say could throw it, could not throw it a little bit. But I just think Blake Sims, let me put it this way. I think Blake Sims would have a much harder time winning a national championship and scoring the type points that you have to score consistently in this league to be able to do it, because the game has changed. Not saying he wouldn't be good. I just think it would be harder. And that team was pretty good around him.
Here's what I think about in that regard. One, I thought that Gus's best teams were when he had a guy like a Nick Marshall. I didn't understand why he didn't
in Gus's system, because it was a little bit different until the past 4 years when he ran all the same stuff. But go ahead.
And then with Blake Sims, that was before really the onset of Kiffin doing a lot of RPOs, and we spread it around a little bit more. I would have loved to have seen Blake in a system that ran some RPOs because we weren't really doing that. And I think that Blake threw a good deep ball. His intermediate throws were not great, as you displayed by the fact he had 3 picks in the first 20 minutes of the 2014 Iron Bowl. But he had a good deep ball. And I think if it was just those quick little throws and normally on those RPOs on a slant, the guys there's a big window.
So like UCF, like he'd have been a good fit at UCF with what they do offensively.
Right.
Like I agree.
But yeah, I would say more so you're not going to see a guy like Jake Coker.
That's a good call. That's a good call.
I don't know that he can run the RPO to the level, and heck, people didn't think that people didn't think that Matt Jones could. He couldn't run, but yet he was a great decision maker, could put the ball in a window and had a great deep ball.
And like you mentioned earlier, the guys he had on the outside, it was just an absolute alien festival. Even with Waddle going down, who, to me, in my opinion, I think is going to be the best pro at any of them. And
he was our best receiver last year, I thought, going into the season.
Just looking at it from a defensive standpoint, and again, look, Devontae is elite, and I get it, but Waddle has just that gear. I mean, you talk about the Iron Bowl. I mean, Jalen Waddle freaked out. I mean, during the Iron Bowl. And
I was talking about this with some buddies actually this morning. We were talking about the 2019 Iron Bowl and how Waddle was just freaking everywhere.
Dude, special teams, catching the ball, just doing things out of the backfield and screens and stuff like that. And again, it goes to show you that obviously the weapons around you, and you're right with Mac. Unbelievable decision maker. And you take a guy that's not going to screw it up, and you put that talent outside of it in front of them. Because everybody talks about Alabama and the wide receivers and everything. Their offensive line, to me, being able to protect Mac. Because if you put a guy back there that's a Mac book in his mind, not that his name's just Mac, and you give him time and give him those athletes, and he can drop in the bucket, it's a problem. And that's why they were so dominant.
Of course, you bring up the 2019 Iron Bowl. I'm still a little bit pissed about that. Y'all getting that second run off, and then of course the rule gets changed where you wouldn't have gotten it had getting that field goal. Like, gosh, and at the time I was at the game, and I remember being like, "That's going to end up costing us the damn game."
Yeah,
I was fuming walking around the concourse of Jordan-Hare.
Yeah, it's amazing too. It's just a game of inches, and that's why I did a prove me wrong with a buddy of mine, our producer David Cohn, who played at Michigan, and it was Iron Bowl versus Ohio State, Michigan, the game, whatever you want to call it. And just going through, I mean, not even, the kick six, just looking at other Iron Bowls and just how, close most of them really are. Last year, they beat Gus within an inch of his life. But, looking, Hunter, as I kind of forecast, and I want to stick in the SEC West with you, if you don't mind. When you look around the league, we know Alabama has been dominant. You can never bet against Nick Saban. Like you said, it's a quiet confidence walking around. He's going to put the guy out there with the best chance to do the best. But when you look around the West, when you look at A&M, and again, Brian Harsin, it's his first year. We got to wait and see. I'm going to take him out of it. But when you look at A&M, do you see Jimbo being able to not scare Alabama fans? There's no reason to be scared, but to say, listen, Jimbo's actually doing something pretty impressive at Texas A&M, the way he's recruited. And again, he got the blueprint from guess who?
Yep.
Nick Saban.
The scarier guy to me is Lane, because you never know what Lane's going to do. I know you were probably going to get to that.
Yeah, no, it's a great point.
Going to be more of a steady, like consistent, like he might be able to get over the hump at some point and take down Saban. But I think he's gonna give us a good, solid game pretty much every year. This past year, notwithstanding, that was one of their worst performances of the season. Lane is the one who is more like he might go 6-6, but they might just put on an absolute show in Oxford against Alabama. And there's nothing that he wants more. He would take 6-6 right now and beating Nick Saban.
Yeah, I think Ole Miss fans would take 6-6 right now. Yeah, in a second. And, it's amazing, when you hear Nick Saban and some of these other guys talk about Lane, and then Lane talk about it, number one, Lane is unbelievably smart and innovative, in his way. He can change offenses. He can be flexible. But he has been in the room with defensive guys that are telling him the best defensive coaches in the world, Nick Saban, this kills us. This is what's hard for us. And when you see that every day and you get that blueprint, and then you mix that with Matt Corral and Jeff Levy, who, in my opinion, I think those three may have the best rapport, because Bryce is young. He hadn't had a chance to play a full-time season as a full-time guy, but it would be hard to find a better rapport in college football between a starting quarterback, offensive coordinator, and Jeff Levy, and Lane Kiffin as the head coach. That's a scary trio with some of the weapons they have outside. Now, defensively, it is an unmitigated disaster, and they're still at least a year away. But they can score, and at the end of the day, scoring keeps you in it.
Did you watch that 2020 Alabama Ole Miss game?
Oh, my God. Hunter, here's the stat that I say, and I say it all the time. My audience is probably like, here we go again with the Alabama Ole Miss stat. If Ole Miss did not put a defense out on the field, they on air, Mac, just think about this. Just on air, pre-practice Alabama, if Ole Miss doesn't put a defense out in the field, they only give up 20 more total yards. Then that is an insane stat. Like, that's insane.
Yeah. Ironic enough, Luke Ratliff came over to my house to watch that game. And we're both like we ate steaks prior, and that was a late game. And I probably had 6 bourbon drinks during that game.
Hey, listen, look, it's the game. It's the game.
Luke pounded through like 15 Budweisers because it was just like, man, I got to calm the nerves here. It was just, I mean, every time you look up, oh, another touchdown.
Yeah, it
was like we talked about earlier. You just got it. It was all a matter of getting a couple of stops.
That's it.
Much like the SEC championship game against Florida.
Yeah, no doubt. A couple stops, couple turnovers, something
or
to get
a field
behind.
goal maybe.
Yeah, no, and it's very interesting. And listen, what really scares me, if I'm a coach or a fan of the SEC, is what happens if Lane ends up somewhere like Florida, if Dan Mullen leads like that. To me, because again, Ole Miss, not saying you can't win there, but there's a difference in what you can do at Ole Miss as opposed to what you can do at an A&M, at a Florida, which we know Jimbo's not going anywhere. Or, he's not going back to Tennessee anytime soon. I think we can both agree on that. But I think that is a great point, Luke. And speaking about great points, I don't have a lot of them, but here's one. You need to download the Dynasty U app right now. It's like the LinkedIn for recruiting. If you're a child, you have a prospect, doesn't matter what the sport, college coaches love it. They can download it. It's concise, GPA, social media, everything in one place instead of having to email 30,000 emails to a coach, which they're only going to get pissed off and put in the junk folder and maybe even block you. This gives the best chance. Tape doesn't lie, grades don't lie, but it gives the best chance to get eyes on the person you're trying to get recruited. Or if you're the prospect, you can do it yourself. It's free. You can get it from the Google Play Store, anywhere you get your apps. That's the Dynasty U app. It's great stuff. Go download that now. We're here with Alabama sports personality, friend of the show. Excited to get him on. Also, digital marketing executives. Got some more great announcements coming, Mr. Hunter Johnson. And Hunter, for the second half of the conversation here, I do want to start out. I want to ask you, what do you think about the Brian Harsin hire at Auburn? I know it's kind of, and I talk with everybody, it's outside the box, this, that, and the other, but kind of from the Alabama side, what's just your first natural reaction to the hire, and just what do you think?
Well, obviously, I'm coming at it from an Alabama angle, and so my first reaction is always going to be to look for negativity. Like, I'm going to look for why is this a bad hire?
Yeah. I appreciate your candor too, by the way. Thank you.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'll be upfront. I'm not like,
no doubt.
If you look at what he did at Boise, I don't think he built upon the success. I think if anything, he was kind of on a downhill trajectory from what had been accomplished there. Now, I do think that the pandemic might have made that look a little bit worse because their record was not that great last year. I think he's put together a pretty good staff. I thought that was going to be really imperative for him. I thought bringing Derek Mason as defensive coordinator was the biggest thing that he could do, in my opinion. Because, I mean, this kid, he doesn't know where, Lettahatchee is. Doesn't know, where
it's a new territory. I mean, it's a new territory. Right. That's true.
So he's coming in completely unknown. I think he's a good offensive coach. So I think that you made an upgrade there because you're at least going to have somebody who's going to be willing to change. You're going to know kind of where the buck stops offensively. Yeah. Whereas that was Gus's biggest issue. I think Gus is a good coach. I think Gus is going to do well at UCF. But the issue was 1 year it was his offense. The next year it wasn't. He wasn't calling. He wanted to be the CEO. And then he's a ball coach. He was a guy who he needed to call ball plays. And if he got fired because he wasn't calling good plays, he gets fired for that. But the whole last 4 years thing that y'all went through, it's almost like you could have saved 4 years and just made the change 4 years ago.
Yeah, and instead of that, they gave him $7 million a year, but that's neither here nor there. And look, it goes back to what, in my opinion, talking about Gus Malzahn, and I don't want to stay on him too long, but talking about changing and being able to evolve your offense. I mean, you turn on the screen, and I thought Jordan Rogers from SEC Network had a great breakdown of it. Listen, I don't know why you got this guy here. He's not a threat in the slot. You're 6'3", 245-pound tight end. He's not a threat in the slot, but every time you put him here, you do one of two things. And the book was kind of out on him, and it goes back, to evolving. But I'll say this, I think, one thing, and I've heard, from the complex, people that have been up there, is it seems not that Gus Malzahn and his staff weren't serious, but there's accountability and there's a way. It is going to be done a certain way. Now, whether that way works or whether that way doesn't work, but at least you're having people taking 20 steps in one direction instead of everybody taking one step in 20 directions. And I'm always weary, wherever it is, Auburn, it could be Mars Tech and Neptune State for the blind and hungry. But at the end of the day, if you do not have accountability, or you have things going in different directions, and then you have to start hiring your proteges to try and fix the side of the ball that you are supposed to be a guru for, the time is winding down. And, I'm very interested, Hunter, to see this first year. We all know how that first year goes. I mean, you go back to Nick Saban, they lost to, UAB and UL Monroe and all this stuff. And then all of a sudden, they take off and have this dynasty. But I'm interested to see how he builds out the recruiting department the way that Nick Saban did, the way that Nick Saban is in control of everything. I wonder if Bryan Harsin is totally in control. That's a question. And to me, that's been the difference in Nick Saban and Kirby Smart at Georgia, is they have full control.
Well, I would like to think that Auburn people have learned that, we can't continue this same, it's.
Hunter, I wouldn't hold my breath, brother. I wouldn't hold my breath.
You can't continue it. And my Auburn friends all are frustrated by this. Yeah. But it's like that. And Alabama was like that too. I mean, it was the good old boy network. Yeah. Until we're finally this is not working, something has to change. And what I don't understand is why some of your power brokers at Auburn don't realize would I rather win or would I rather have control? Yeah. And to me personally, I would much rather win and relinquish some of that control and let a guy have some autonomy. I think you have one of the best ADs in the country if you let him do his job. And then, I think I look at the hire that Alan Green made, and I look at it I questioned it, but I don't know who you're going to hire that's better than Bryan Harsin at that point. So I think Alan Green did a very good job with that hire. Yeah. But if you're going to hire a guy like Alan Green, you got to let him do the job.
No, you do. You get it. And it was a ballsy play by him. And, it's going to be really interesting to kind of, see how it works out and see how it is 2 or 3 years down the road, and see which members of the staff stays. How long is Derek Mason going to be there? How long is Mike Bobo going to be there? Two guys that have obviously been head coaches and understand that. And I think you made a great point on the hires, because, I always talk about, Hunter, in recruiting, if you're a guy like Bryan Harsin that goes from a Boise to an Auburn and you really don't know the lay of the land that well, it's not that you don't know how to recruit or that you can't recruit Southern kids. You got to know where the hell to go. You got to know where you typically have success or where to go and say, listen, we're not getting this kid out of Louisiana from LSU. We don't need to waste our time with him. And that's what Mike Bobo and Derek Mason and
Will
Zach
Friend.
Etheridge. Yeah, it's exactly right. Will Friend, they know.
Will Friend, real quick, Will Friend was the offensive coordinator at my high school. I didn't play football.
Really?
He was involved with so his dad was our head coach. Okay. Will was the offensive coordinator. And obviously, full disclosure, my mom, growing up, my mom was working in the athletic department in Alabama. So I've been around the program. And so Will played when I was in middle school, and then he was offensive coordinator when I was in high school. Got to know Will, really like Will a lot. I hate that he's at Auburn, but I think he's one of those guys who's been he's been so many different places in the league. He knows where those guys are. He knows where in Alabama. He actually graduated from high school in Starkville. He knows where the kids are in Mississippi. He knows if there's a kid in Mississippi. Oh, well, there's no way we're not going to get this kid out of Pontotoc. Ole Miss we have no shot at him. So we're not going to go to Pontotoc to even talk to him. We'll focus our efforts down in maybe Lumberton because we can get a kid out of there.
No, it's a great point, because it's all about efficiency, because that one day or that couple trips you take to a place you're not getting a kid, you could be actually going and talking to a kid you can or giving yourself a chance. And I think that's a great point. And Hunters, we kind of wind down here, man. I obviously can't let you go without talking a little college basketball.
This is what I came on to talk about.
Yeah,
man.
no doubt, man.
I've been doing research on Auburn's roster this morning.
Hey, listen, well, you're segueing right into it, brother, because I've got it. And, I do want to have a little, not debate, but, talking, because for once, and this is almost weird to say, but I'm going to say it. For once in the state of Alabama, when you look at, you can actually have an argument between Auburn or Alabama having elite success in college basketball at the same time. And that's why I've said on this show, it is the golden era of college basketball in the state of Alabama, but not just at Auburn and Alabama. Look at Andy Kennedy and UAB. Look at Richie Riley and USA. Look at North Alabama and what they were able to do. So it's kind of new to us. And I want to start with Alabama, obviously, because here's my questions when I look at it. Number one, Nate Oates is a damn good coach. We all know that. I'm interested to see how he does without Herb Jones, without Petty. Reese, was pretty good in spots in the tournament, but he wasn't a dominant player by any stretch of the imagination. And then when he gets his guys in there, how do you look at this next year coming off what was the best year Alabama's had in a whole hell of a long time?
Well, I also think that you got to look at, first of all, I want to say that last year was the most fun basketball season ever, both with Alabama getting a double and Auburn's, struggles. I will say that game where Shareef came back down in January down at Auburn was not fun.
That was a wild game.
And I said like the week before, I was like, this is going to be Shareef's first game back. Friday night, I'm like, yep, do it.
There it is. Yeah.
But no, I think talking about Oates moving forward, Avery did leave him some talent. Obviously John, Herb, Alex. But if you look at the guys he's brought in, hadn't really had any misses. You look at Shackelford. Now Shackelford had initially signed with Avery, but if we had wanted Shaq not to come, or if Shaq had decided he didn't want to, that he could have gotten out of that. But Oates looked at film on Shaq and was like, he flew out there to California to see Shaq immediately. He was like, I want this kid.
Yeah.
Just got to teach him how to play defense, and he got better at that last year. Primo.
Primo's maybe the best one. Primo may be the best one, Hunter. I'm just watching that kid, and at 6'6", and he's still figuring it out. That kid can stroke it.
Well, and the biggest thing for me is, all right, a kid from Canada coming in, and at no point last season was his defense ever even an issue. The kid's grown up only guarding guys who think bacon is round his entire life. And yet it's just D'ing guys up. So it was, he was not like he wasn't like a lockdown. He wasn't hurt.
No, but he wasn't a liability too much.
Exactly. And that's the big thing. Like Shackelford, his freshman year was a liability. Primo was not at all. I think if you look at the guys he's brought in, Bruner is the transfer. That worked out very, very well. Even though he went through some injury issues, I think it could have gone better if he hadn't done that.
He was the Anthony McLemore of that team. I swear he was literally, and now he shot it probably a little better than Anthony, but there were a few games where he was huge for them.
The Auburn game in Auburn.
Huge.
Yeah. So I'm excited to see some of these new guys that he's brought in. Obviously, we're looking right now. We want to see if Primo's going to be back, if Shaq's going to be back. If I had to put money on that, I would say one of them will be back, one of them won't. I'd say Primo's probably the most likely to be gone. Shaq, it doesn't really make sense for me for him to leave because he's 6'3" and can't play the one. So I don't know where. I do think that he can eventually play somewhere professionally and make money. I just don't think it's going to be at the NBA. Vesela, I hope those guys and Herb all do well at the combine. I hope Primo does just well enough to decide that he wants to come back. But yeah, if you look at, so I think the guy who's going to be kind of like Bruner on this year's team is going to be Noah Gurley, who you're probably familiar with.
Yep. That was a big pickup.
Well.
That was a big pickup.
Oates is raving about him. Just he does all the right things. He's going to be kind of a Herb of this team too. He's 6'8", can guard multiple spots. I was even looking at Auburn's roster and our roster, like how they kind of match up. He'll be the guy who will probably be playing on Jabari.
God, that's going to be a heck of a matchup.
Exactly. You've got a young kid with elite athleticism, and then a seasoned veteran, and then watch them go at it. It'll be fun.
Yeah, no doubt. And Jelly Fam, what's the latest on Quinterly? He's
back. He's going to be fine.
He's going to be back. Okay.
He never even really. I never saw.
Yeah, I think the last time I saw, I think he tweeted that, he was obviously going to find out where he was. And this is a while ago. I just hadn't seen him post anything yet. But again, you're obviously way more in tune with that than I am, which that's
the way he came on late in the year.
Oh, man.
Very exciting.
Yeah. The dude, he ought to be sponsored by Pool Noodles, man. He's the floaters left and right. But, when I look at the Alabama roster, you talk about Gurley down low at 6'8". Who's going to be that center? Who's going to be that force down low that can hang with a Walker Kessler? And it was weird last year. There weren't a lot of dominant big men in the league last year. If you look, and the style of play is more up and down. But for those teams that do have big men, is Gurley going to have to be the guy that goes down there and guards the center? Or are they going to put Bediako down there?
It'll be Charles Bediako.
Okay.
I've heard nothing but great things out of him. You'll have him down there. Chiku can also play there. Chiku's way more of a kind of a 4 than a 5. So yeah, it'll be Bediako down there. And again, I've heard nothing but great things. I saw where Quinterly did an interview with I think it was somebody out of Jersey, and they were talking about how good Bediako has looked in terms of, apparently he catches everything. His hands are just elite.
Yeah.
And then I look at Auburn's roster, and you got Walker Kessler, who, didn't play as well at UNC, didn't have the experience that he probably wanted to, but I was looking at his stats. He was an elite rebounder for them.
Oh, yeah. I mean, when they let him play, you look at the tournament, he went for 16, 13, and 9.
Even games where he was playing 8 minutes, he was getting 6 rebounds.
Yeah.
If you look at his KenPom rebound percentages, they're both 19 and 16. So Auburn had nobody anywhere close to that last year.
Yeah, no.
So he's going to come in immediately and get boards.
Yeah, and you look at both these rosters, and again, you know what? You have new guys coming in, and they always got to gel, and that's up to the coach to coalesce, and that's really tough to do. But you have 2 elite coaches in the state of Alabama, and Bruce Pearl and Nate Oates. So when you look at Auburn's roster, Hunter, and we kind of look at this matchup that's coming up a little bit, you look at the guard spots, and I just, in my mind, being able to see the guys that, the Katie Johnsons and the Quinterleys and Shackelford, and the style of play, I think, is going to be so up and down. When you look at these two teams, do they kind of mirror each other, do you think, a little bit in their style of play? Now, I know Nate is right under the basket and shoot the 3. Bruce is similar to that. But when I watch both these teams play, even last year, and I think about this year, the transition game is almost the biggest thing in the whole game when I look at it, offensively and defensively.
I think they really are a lot this year, especially with Auburn's, when you look at the 1 and the 2 and what they're going to have. I think Wendell Green will start at the 1, and then you'll have KD at the 2. But KD can also play the 1. So you're going to have you got really good ball handlers in the game. And you've also got Jasper, who is more of a score first kind of point guard, but can play the 1 or the 2, I would think. So those guys are going to be running. You got Alan Flanagan on the wing, who can shoot it. Thankfully, you don't have JT Thor. But I don't know where you would put him. You got so many bigs back. You got Jalen Williams, who I thought made a huge progression from year 1 to year 2. Not excited. I hope he doesn't have any progression, but you can see how, if he can progress even a little bit more, he's going to have a great year. That's going to be a great first guy to have coming off the bench. I think that both rosters are going to play fast. Alabama will probably play a little faster just because of the 3s and layups type style that we do. But both teams are going to play really fast. You can definitely see another game, like we saw in Auburn this year. Both teams in the 90s. Yeah,
and it's. I tell you what, I can't wait, Hunter, to see something. I don't think. And again, I've gone back and looked, and maybe there's some Dead Sea Scroll they didn't pick up that Auburn played Alabama in the NCAA tournament in basketball, with Aristotle and Plato and all that, but I can't find it. And can you imagine? We all know how crazy the Iron Bowl is. It's going to be impossible to replicate that. But can you imagine if Auburn played Alabama in the Sweet 16 or something? That's something, Hunter, I thought I'd never see. You take me back 7-8 years ago, take both of us back 7-8 years ago, and they'd had to put me in a straitjacket.
If you go back and if I had told you this in 2012 when Alabama beat Auburn 46-45 Tuscaloosa, or then the next year down at Auburn where I think Alabama scored 37 points in the game. That was the game where they showed Cam was back, and it had been delayed a night, I think, because of an ice storm. And they showed Cam with a microphone behind Philip Marshall, doing leading cheers. And I was legit this is the top 5 worst moment of my life. But no, there was a time, you talk about a big Alabama Auburn game. There was a time in the 80s, I don't know when it was, where Alabama and Auburn played for the SEC tournament, in the SEC tournament championship game. I can imagine, that was back when Sonny and Wimp were going at it.
Yeah, those were the days.
I can imagine that would have been cool. But or Alabama, what if Alabama and Auburn played in the Final Four?
That would be, Hunter, I think I would feel like that'd create a time warp or a black hole or something, and we'd all get sucked up in it. But it looks like we're going that way. Eventually, it's going to happen. And Hunter, before I let you go, I had a hot take, whatever you want to call it, hot take a couple months ago, that I firmly believe that the SEC basketball in the next 3 to 5 years is going to be one of, if not the premier basketball conference. And I get, shredded by ACC people and Big Ten people and all this stuff. But when I look around this league, Hunter, look at the draft picks. I mean, when the coach that does the worst is Jerry Stackhouse, regardless of what you think about him, this league has recruited and built facilities. They made their mind up 4 or 5 years ago. They want to be dominant in college basketball. When the SEC makes their mind up about something, In my opinion, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when.
Well, it wasn't that long ago that the SEC was the top conference in college basketball. If you look at it according to Ken Palm, in 2003, Alabama or the SEC was the top conference in college basketball.
Yeah, I mean, like consistently where it's just the narrative is because again, you look around and during basketball season, the SEC gets talked about, but not nearly the way on a national scale that, obviously that some ACC schools, most of them in Big Ten, but just from a dead standpoint, because I'm looking around, Hunter, right now in the conference, show me a road game that you feel great about going to play somebody at.
That's been the case for the last couple of years. Me and Cecil talk about that on our podcast a lot, about how in football, like Alabama playing Vanderbilt, there's a 0% chance of Vanderbilt winning that game.
They're not going to win. As long as the bus gets there, they're not going to win.
Alabama is the top team in college at SEC in basketball last year, playing the worst team in Vanderbilt. Like there was still a chance. Like not any team can beat any other team on any given night. And I would even say a lot of times that home road doesn't matter. Like obviously you're going to be more likely to lose a road game, but I mean Vanderbilt could have come in here and shot lights out against us last year, and it is what it is.
Yeah.
But I get you talk about the national perception.
Yeah.
I think that if the SEC can keep this bit of consistency, because this past year, it got bashed because to me it was unfair in that Kentucky wasn't good, so people didn't think the league was good.
Yeah, that's exactly.
The league was very good last year, top to bottom. There was a ton of parity, like we talked about. Any team could beat any other team. But I get why the national perception is because it was so unwatchable for so many years. Yeah. So I get that, like, it's just taken, I think, the national media some time to be like, okay, we were sleeping on this. Yeah. Like the SEC is good. They have more than Kentucky. It's not just about Kentucky.
Yeah, and again, as a guy that has grown up, even when it was Jefferson Pilot Sports, and I'll tell you something hilarious, Hunter. I don't think I've ever shared this story on here, but so I was a ball boy, or like the kids now they got like grown men with mops that sweep up.
I was a ball boy too.
That's exactly sitting under the goal before the game, and literally all 19 of the Daves that worked for JP Sports, like Dave Baker, Dave Neal. You remember back in the day, they did their pregame from half court. And I forgot, I think Kentucky was in town. Tubby Smith was coaching. His son, I think Saul, was the point guard back then. And the teams would go to the locker rooms before the game, and they do their pregame thing out in the middle of the court. Well, the arena, there'd be a lot of people there, and we as ball boys, as 11 and 12-year-olds, would play pickup in front of all these people, and the students, going nuts. Well, it was life or death for us. Like, that was life or death. Like, you had to look good or, you're going to be embarrassed in front of everybody. And I'll never forget, somebody shot a 3, and there was a long rebound. And I'm like, I'm going to save this. Hunter, I turn around, I run full speed, grab the ball, throw it behind me, and run straight into them live on the air. Dave Neal and Dave Baker, I'm sure they remember this, and just wipe them all out. They had that umbrella-looking thing that they put next to the camera. Light. Snap that thing like it wasn't even there, and got a standing ovation from the crowd. And that was probably the most embarrassed I've ever been in my life, but I don't know if I've ever told that story.
You should be proud, man.
Man, I mean, look, guess what? I saved it, and we won the pickup game. So to me, at the end of the day, it was worth it. But no, man, I just
probably got some crap from the ops guy when he got back.
Dude. Oh my gosh. Once they stopped laughing, they were like, hey man, we got to make sure there was no more pickup after that. So not only did I save it and we won, but that was the last ever pickup game we were able to play, and walked off the courts, winners, and it ended up being a hell of a game.
A somewhat similar story. This is just straight up embarrassing. There's nothing that's actually cool about it.
It's just us. It's just us.
So when I was in college, I was president of what was called March Madness at the time. And whenever I drove to pretty much every game, but if there was ever a game, I also worked in marketing in the athletic department. And so if there was ever a game that I couldn't get to, I would just go to Coach Godfrey, and he'd be like, we'll take care of you. So I got to fly with the team down to Gainesville. We're playing Tuesday night. It's 2007. They're defending national champions, JP game. And I'm sitting on the front row behind our bench, but it's like 45 minutes for tip. And our guys our managers are off doing something. Our guys don't have anybody rebounding. And so I'm out like rebounding for the guys, wearing like khakis and a crimson blazer.
There you go.
Rowdy Reptiles are already giving me crap for the jacket. So I'm make a pass, and then a ball comes down and just hits me directly on the head. And they had already been watching me because of the jacket and making fun of me. And then they just all start chanting like, ah, ah. And I'm like, oh my gosh.
That's making me sweat, man.
Yeah.
That's tough. Well, that's cool. You got to fly with the team and everything like that. And again, it's something where I'm just glad that we're going to get to watch good basketball on a consistent basis. And you're going to have a bunch of teams in the tournament from the SEC, and I'm excited to see it. And I know, and I always say, listen, as somebody that covers the SEC in a lot of sports, everybody is a fan of somebody. But being able to watch the whole conference get better and being able to say, listen, I'm going to watch this Vandy Mississippi State game, not just because, I have to for my job, but this should be a pretty damn good basketball game.
And also something you said earlier when you were talking about Luke, about how the whole conference kind of rallying around, when something like that happens. I think that's even more so in basketball because we're such more of a niche community.
Yes.
And we've seen some stuff. If you followed Alabama or Auburn basketball for 20 years, you have seen some stuff. So we all get it. That's why Arkansas fans who we had a big rivalry with Arkansas this year, and then Eric Musselman ends up paying for the flowers at Luke's funeral. There's just that SEC basketball fever that was the hashtag phrase.
Yeah.
So bad. It's real.
It really, no, you're exactly right. I mean, I had it the whole time and I loved it. I mean, it was even watching when I was coaching in Montana before I started this, I used to have to not sneak, but walk through the snow to this one sports bar there. The only one that had the SEC network, so I could watch, before the conference games, watching all the SEC teams play, and because the basketball was so much better to watch.
Dude, you should have gotten your parents' cable login like a true millennial.
Dude, yeah, you're right. It's with that whole situation. To be honest with you, I'm just glad we had the lights on and the heater worked where I was in Montana, and then it wasn't some Call of the Wild action going on out there. Even though talk about seeing some things. But Hunter, man, this is great. I knew it was going to be great, brother. I appreciate you coming on. We got to do this more often. I know you guys are doing big things over there. Tell everybody where they can find you on social media, because it's a great account to follow. Love it or hate it. It's always interesting and fun.
I will say this, I'll give Auburn credit sometimes. I can be self-deprecating sometimes. Now, this basketball season, I was not really ever. But I'll still bring up the kick six and how it sucks.
Yeah, no. And again, it's all, it's good content and stuff that keeps the conversation going. And man, I'm excited to do this again. And again, tell everybody what's your handle on social media so they can give you a follow. Hey, can you
hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay,
can you hear
sorry.
Me? No, it's all good. No, we can edit it. What's up?
I was fidgeting with it.
No, you're good. Just what's your social media handle so people can give you a follow?
It's at Hunter L. Johnson. All no spaces, at Hunter L. Johnson. You'll come for the sports commentary. You'll stay for the cat pit.
There we go, man. Well, Hunter, I appreciate it, brother. Let's do this again soon. Excited to talk to you. And as this season rolls on, I really appreciate you coming on, my friend.
Awesome, Jake. I appreciate you for having me, and look forward to talking to you soon.
Definitely, buddy. Stay safe out there. We appreciate you guys joining us. It's been another edition of the Jboy Show. Subscribe, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, anywhere. Go to thejboyshow.com, grab some merch. Again, it's been another edition of the Jboy Show with Hunter Johnson, and we are gone.
The Jboy Show is produced by David Cohn, Technical Director Dave Hammock, Creative Director David Culbertson, Audio Engineer Feyzan Shareef, Production Assistants Blaine Crain and Kyle Orr, Executive Producers Jake Crain, Vince Thompson, Steve Chamberlain, and David Cohn. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel and visit our website, thejboyshow.com, for updates regarding our newest apparel and merch designs. Win the water cooler with the Jboy Show.